Okay, I want to talk again about the Kennedy assassination, and I guess the reason I've been thinking about it lately is because it's been in the news with Trump saying we're releasing, they're talking about the Epstein or whatever the guy's name was, that slime bag, and they were supposed to release those files but didn't, and then they released some of the files of the JFK, and so that all those things kind of came up at the same time, and it's caused me to start thinking again about the Kennedy assassination. Now, let me be one thing's clear: I'm not a conspiracy nut, and I never thought at all about the conspiracy issues relating to the Kennedy assassination, because I'll tell you why. Be honest, when Kennedy was killed, it broke my heart. It broke my heart, and I still haven't gotten over it. I can't watch films of Kennedy even giving some of his speeches, which I do now, but it still hurts. He was a wonderful man, a great president, and how much better off we would have been if he had lived. So I couldn't bring myself to even think about the assassination conspiracy theories, because I frankly didn't care. It was like, that's not going to bring him back. And we're just going to have to get through this, and we suffer emotionally. And he was like a member of our family. And those of you who are younger probably don't know what I'm talking about, but people my age know exactly what we're talking about. People older. He was like a member of the family, and he had a wonderful family, and had a great sense of humor. Unlike Trump, Kennedy had a pretty nice, deprecating sense of humor. Made fun of himself all the time. Does Trump ever make fun of himself? Oh no, he hires other people to do that for him. So, but just Kennedy was a principled guy, and so it was too painful emotionally to even think about a conspiracy. So I never did, until I went to Dallas. I was there on a business trip, and I just, out of curiosity, I drove the route, and this came down from the airport down to whatever that street was, and it intersected with Main Street. I took Main Street. Main Street's a wide street, boulevard, nice buildings, set back from the road. We'll get to that later. And to Houston Street. And Houston Street, I took the same right angle turn from Main Street to Houston Street. And then a block from there is Elm Street. And guess what's on Elm Street? Guess what's on the corner of Elm Street and Houston? That's right, Oswald's building, the Texas Book Depository. He's sitting there with a rifle. As this caravan comes down Main Street, gets to, and it's good, kind of a good clip down Main Street. Again, we'll get to that later. Down a good clip down Main Street. Comes to Houston, slows to almost a dead stop because they had to make a right turn at Houston under this route that somebody had designed. Take a right turn on with a caravan of several cars, limousines, including Kennedy's. What speed do you think they could have been going at that time? They get around that, and a block later, they've got to make another right-hand turn. Except this wasn't right-hand. This was more like, if you look at it on the map, it's like a 110 or 115 degree turn, which means instead of it going, down and instead of going straight and then going right angles, it went straight and then goes that way. So to do that, the car had to slow down to almost a stop. Now, that's called two consecutive right-hand turns. For a caravan to do that is a violation of Secret Service protocol, and it's a long-standing protocol. Why? Because it slows the caravan down to almost nothing. Meaning, if you got a president in that car, particularly if it's an open car, the last thing you want is for that car to be coming to a standstill out in the middle of the open streets, particularly if it's near buildings, like a tall building right next to the street, basically right on top of the car, while the car's at a standstill. Nobody in his right mind would do that, and that didn't hit home until I tried to drive that, and when I made that second turn, my car was stopped. And there was no traffic. I was just driving it, and I took the right on Houston, took a left on Elm, and right in front of the textbook supposedly, my car was not moving. So that is right there is not only a violation of protocol, it's a violation of common sense. Who in his right mind would take the President of the United States and drive him to a situation where he came down Main Street, which is pretty much safe because they were moving at a good clip. Buildings were set far back. Nobody could get a good shot at the Caravan moving that fast with all the people all around it. They couldn't do it. But that spot right there in front of that tech was perfect for an assassin's bullet. Perfect. You couldn't have set a better place if that was your objective from that route, was to let's find a perfect place for somebody to have a nice clean shot at the president while the car is sitting still and he's sitting there in an uncovered car. And wouldn't have to go through any Secret Service people or anything else because he was shooting straight down on him. Straight down. So that's what really, that was a long time ago, and I've since kind of forgotten about it until I started reading some other stuff, and I said, oh my God. And it just came flooding back to me. How absurd is it for the American people? And unfortunately, something like even now, 60% of the American people don't believe the Warren Report. I did, particularly with a lot of these other theories, but I don't anymore. And now I think it used to be like well over 70%, something like 75% of the American people did not believe the Warren Report, and they were right. And I was wrong for accepting the Warren Report without really looking into it. When you look into this stuff, I was like, oh my God, just that thing alone, that they brought that limo into what was a kill zone. It was a trap. And I was looking at probably many of you don't remember Clint Hill, but Clint was one of the Secret Service agents on the car. And it was his job to protect the president, and he was testifying. He said two things were just blew my mind. The first thing was he said, "Oh yeah, Main Street came to an end at Houston." Main Street doesn't come to an end at Houston. He has to look at a map. It doesn't come to an end at Houston. And the second thing is, he said that, well, this is what got me. He said, well, when we came around the corner, and I assume he was talking about the Elm Street corner. He said, we looked up and we saw some people in the book depository, but we didn't think anything of it. Because all along the route, come along Main Street, there have been people in the windows shouting and waving and waving to Kennedy and everything. And so we didn't think anything of it. Well, I just talked about this a second ago. The route down Main Street was selected as relatively safe because the car would be moving at a good clip, and the buildings from which somebody with a rifle could possibly be sitting were set far enough back that it would be almost impossible to hit a moving target at the speed of the limo was moving from those distances. The angle just wouldn't allow it. So that's why they weren't worried about that. He turns the corner, and he looks up, and he sees two people, and we're sitting right in front of this building, which is going right. So you look straight up from the limo, and there it is, looking right down on you. And they didn't think anything of it. Yeah. You know what he thought? He didn't want to say this in his testimony because he didn't want to, think he was pointing the finger at anybody, or not looking like he wasn't doing his job by jumping in and doing something to protect the president. You know what he thought? He thought what you would have thought, or what I would have thought. Oh my God, we're in the middle of a trap. There's no getting out of this. We are in a trap. And that's exactly what was right. And he didn't have much time to think about much else because it was just a few seconds later that I as well pumped 3 bullets into the president. So Clint Hill was like a decent human being. His testimony, if he were on the witness stand, would have been destroyed. Those statements that he made, they're ridiculous. So the reality is that limo drove right into a trap, and someone set that trap, and it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone to set that trap, because the government officials, the Secret Service, whoever it was responsible for setting that whole thing in order. They're the ones responsible for it. They knew damn good and well that route was the most dangerous possible route they could possibly take. They knew about that Texas depository. They knew that the car would be coming to an absolute stop. They knew that somebody sitting up there with a rifle could have an easy shot. And, wow, amazingly, there was somebody sitting up there with a rifle, and it was somebody that, guess what, had been investigated by the FBI. And he'd been investigated by the FBI because of his time spent in Russia, because of the anti-American statements he'd been making, because he was all on board for Cuba. Remember, this was shortly after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so he was. So you can't tell me that the people in the federal government, the FBI, the Secret Service, the CIA did not know about Lee Harvey Oswald's propensities to being a dangerous man. And what a coincidence that Lee Harvey Oswald, this known dangerous person, gets a job at this same exact spot where the Kennedy trap was laid at the beginning. I mean, in the middle of October. The plans for him to go to Dallas were being finalized in early October. Mid-October, this guy's working in the Texas Book Suppository. And then a month later, sitting right there in that place where he was working, they deliver Kennedy's right up to him and say, "Here you are, Mr. Oswald. Take your shot." So it's the more you look at this thing, the fishier it is, the more it smells. And it's too bad we're never going to get to the bottom of this. But Kennedy has some very powerful bad people. I mean, I believe leftovers from J. Edgar Hoover, from Allen Dulles, from John Foster Dulles, from Curtis LeMay. These were all people that really disliked Kennedy because they thought he was too weak on communism and whatever other misguided. Oh, they didn't like him because of his views on civil rights. They didn't like him because he was pulling out of Vietnam. All kinds of reasons. But the main thing is, there was clearly a setup there, and unfortunately we're never going to get to the bottom of it, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be still thinking about it, talking about it, and not accepting a bunch of bullshit that they try to feed to us all the time. There's a reason people distrust the government, and frankly, I often don't blame them. So, on that downer, sorry about that, but I'm not going to talk about this anymore unless I discover something. But like I said, my personal discovery was a long time ago when I drove that route, and I was shocked, and I don't shock easily. Okay, I do, but that's a different subject altogether. I'll talk to you later.